Good day, people. This is Kosaki again. We are coming back. This is our third phase. On our third phase, we are actually going to tap into deeper, whereby we'll talk more of the of the energies that we need to put in creating this wealth, and also to plant the habit, and also to own it up so that it can become your way. I welcome you back, and this is our topic that we have advertised, talking about investing in 7 different baskets. On our first phase, we spoke of organizing a group of people. That means you become 10 people, and then after that, as you are becoming 10 people, then you actually select, you as 10 people, you bring your 10, and the other 9 each person bring the 10, and then after that you pay 100 rand in a certain account, so that you can actually pay that every day on a day-to-day basis. And then after that, you will be doing that for a period of 365 days, that is 12 months. And then it's phase 2. Phase 2, we spoke of wealth creation. That was the introduction to wealth creation. And we also tap into the types of principles that you need to understand as to how would you apply them. We also mention these principles. We also actually explain them so that each person can understand them and realize that by actually applying those principles in your life, they will be able to help you and make a difference in your life. But now, this time around, we're going to actually be talking about, we're going to actually tapping into debts, which is the debt trap. How can you avoid that? Because at some point, as you are actually creating wealth, you've got to understand that to create wealth, you cannot actually have debts, because once you have debts, obviously you will not have a sort of wealth, Those are things that you need to understand them. Now, I want to first, before I can give the steps of avoiding these debts, what is it that you need to do so that you can be able to understand step by step. But as you understand step by step, you've got to realize that there are also other sort of factors that you will have to look to in order to understand that, you have to actually make sure that you apply those actually, you have to look out to those factors as you are actually applying your exercise in avoiding debts. You must remember that the most important thing is that when you are actually trying to achieve your financial freedom, you've got to sort of switch from a certain behavior to a certain behavior. And as you are doing that, you've got to be consistent, and you've got to be constant in applying your mindset to that behavior. You must remember that on our first phase, we spoke of it's not about the money, or perhaps the bulk of money that we're investing. It's about the habit that you are planting, because you don't invest quite a lot of money. You just make sure that you plant a habit. Once the habit is there, then it's easy to actually do these things. Now, I want to tell you that a debt is a trap. But other companies, they use sort of different commercials to attract people so that they can be able to actually achieve what they want to achieve, because they want to actually attract you so that you can do, or perhaps you can buy into the ideas, or perhaps the commercial, or perhaps the trap that they are actually putting it. It doesn't appear as a trap. It appears as a sort of it's a good thing to do, you have a qualification, and then after that you get a job, and then after you got the job, they start to advertise that, look, There's a bond that is actually available for you. If you can apply, you can just get it, and then credit cards, they start to kick in. Credit cards, overdrafts, they start to kick in. And then after that, you've got check accounts, they start to kick in. Garage cards, they start to kick in. Now you realize by the time you lose your job, you don't have anything that you are owning as an asset. Now I'm tapping into sort of accounting terms and all of that, but it's a reality. It's a reality that we need to watch when we are talking about the debt trap. Now, it is actually a humiliation by day and a worry by night. You must remember the purpose of us to teach about the wealth creation is for a person so that he can be able to sleep at night comfortable, to enjoy life, to be able to do other things. And the purpose of investing is to make sure that, and the purpose of wealth creation is to make sure that we do things right, and all of that. So, yeah. So the best thing that you can understand about, the debt trap is that it will actually make you not to be able to actually afford, the things that you want to afford, like the type of life that you want to afford. The main objective is to make sure that you do what? Main objective is to make sure that you've got money that is left, and the money that is left aside for you is actually, it will help you to perhaps do things that you are supposed to do, that is buy assets. After you bought assets, you can always be able to do what? You can always be able to sleep at night because you've got something that you are owning. Now, one of the most important things that you need to do, you need to make a list of all your debts. Now, when you're making a list of all your debts, then it's when you actually want to picture and you want to determine how much money do you have in your account. Once you can do that, then you can always say, okay, fine. Now I know how much do I have. Now what I need to do, I need to understand that I owe so much. If you know that you owe so much, then it's easy for you to understand that to the money that you are actually earning, that is your salary, you can always determine that how you can actually pay your debts. But the other most important point that I want to bring forward is that you need to understand the true cost of debt. At some point, money can be good, and money can be good and it can be cheap, and then once that happens, institutions, they will start to actually market the credit cards so that you can start looking at as a sort of it's good to spend, but now when you have to return and pay that money, it can put your life at risk because you can be listed and all of that. Now, one of the things that I would like to stipulate is that according to Statistics South Africa, there are actually 750,000 people that are in administration, that is people that cannot actually take debts, take credit, out of 6 million people, that's quite a lot of people. 650,000 people, that's quite a lot of people. But I want us to tap into the secrets, the secrets that we can apply in avoiding debt. The first secret is that interest charges cost you more than you think. So we need to make sure that when you buy a TV set or a furniture, you've got to understand that if you are buying that with a credit, you are actually raising your debt. If you're buying something on credit, you're actually raising a debt, Let's say you've got 10,000 rand, that is your principal amount, and then you've got 1.5, I'm making an example, and then 1.5 at 15 interest rate, then which is okay, let's take that 10,000 rand as your bond. Now you've got the TV set that is 1.5, and that TV set is you taking it on credit, and you're actually paying 15%, meaning that the debt that you have, it's 11,500. It's increasing, and you are actually expected to pay that, you know. And you know, secret number two, you cannot afford credit balances. Credit cards can be very useful, but at some point you've got to realize that once you are actually owing those credit cards, you've got to realize that you have to pay them. You have to pay them. And when you have to pay a credit card, you pay it with interest. And when you pay that credit card interest, you've got a deadline. They give you a specific time frame, or perhaps like a date that you've got to pay. So if you don't pay that credit card at that specific time, then what will happen? Then they will list you as a bad payer. Now, when you are listed as a bad payer, what happens? That means you cannot actually take another credit until you have actually cleaned your slate of the bad paying client on your credit card. Now, that is a secret number two. Secret number three, well, you must, if you cannot pay cash, you cannot afford it. That is a reality. If you cannot pay your cash, if you cannot buy something in cash, you know, that means you cannot actually afford it. If we can keep that principle to avoid debts, it can help us moving forward. And the most important thing that we need to remember is that if you cannot pay it in cash, that means you must remember that there are many things that are expected us as like parents to pay. Like I'm referring to school fees. School fee you have to pay cash. School fee you have to have a cash. Buying petrol you have to have a cash. You know. So obviously once you start to determine that if you cannot pay it cash, then that means you cannot afford it. Now, the best way to a debt elimination is that principle. You know, if you consistently watch your habits, every time when something is advertised, you look at that and you look at your pocket, that is your salary that you have, and then after that you realize that I cannot do this, I cannot pay this, you know, which is an advice that I can bring forward is that you've got to make sure that at least you save 500 Rand. If you can save 500 Rand, you save 500 Rand on a month-to-month basis. It's going to be easy because it's not a big amount, but at least it's something that you put aside and it can help you in the long run. You know, and savings, like they give actually a sort of like energies, because I mean it's a money that you have that you put aside that will help you in future. Now I want us to look at step 2, how to save yourself. You know, we remember that when it comes to financial terms, like when you are creating wealth, financial success is when you have that ability to sleep comfortably, and also to have a sort of a spunky night, you know. So when you're saving yourself, when you're saving that 500 Rand on a month-to-month basis, you are saving yourself on stress. That means you'll know that there is money that you set aside. You can start building up that credit. You can start enjoying life again. But obviously you've got to clearing my throat, you've got to make that habit on a day-to-day basis. Now obviously when you're eliminating debt, by actually saving that 500 Rand, you are eliminating debt. Now, I want us to come back to the personal statement. What is it that you need to do? As you are creating wealth, you need to understand that you save, or perhaps you have a sort of a personal statement that is of liabilities and assets. We remember that on phase 2, we made it clear that assets is something that you are owning, and liabilities is something that you are owing. So you've got to have a statement whereby it will show you how much do you own that is on assets. And then you've got the total, how much do you owe, that is on liabilities. Now, once you start to do that, when I'm talking about like assets, I'm talking about, I'm talking about like, check accounts, savings accounts, brokerage accounts, retirement accounts, and all of that. Home equity. Sorry, I'm talking about these are liabilities, These are liabilities, not assets. And then, like, you've got short-term debt. That will include credit cards, garage cards, overdraft facilities, student loans, and car finance, and all of that. And the long term will be obviously a bond, which is a mortgage. Now, once you start to see this, and then you realize that, okay, look, with your statement, you've got like your bond payments, your rent, personal car and loans, and all of that, taxes, credit cards, and all of that, day-to-day items, such as groceries and all of that, because those are things that you have to pay. And when it comes to, I want us to go to necessities that you cannot live without: electricity, clothing, water, bond payments, groceries, phones. Those are things that you need to have. And also going to the restaurants, entertainment, CDs, DVDs, and all of that, equipment, subscriptions, dry cleaning service, health clubs, and all of that. So these are things that we need to remember, that, if you actually have a sort of like a statement, something that shows these are things that we need to pay, then you'll have to look at that. Now, I want us to look on assets: salary, commission, tips, guaranteed bonuses, and alimony. All of these things, these are things that we need to look at. Like I've just mentioned them. If you mentioned like the sort of like assets and the liabilities, Now you must remember that the type of benefits that you are going to have, once you actually start to actually pay this, you must remember that we have savings and investments. You are saving, so that will give you a peace of mind, because you'll be able to actually know that you're actually owning your own home. And also you've got a rent that is extra. And then you've got like early retirement funds that you have in place. Now you can start planning your holidays, showing your family how to live a financial life, and all of that. The other last part that I would like to tap on is that you can always set investment objectives. You've got to look at emergency funds. You've got to look at short-term objectives, and the medium-term objectives, and the long-term objectives, which is I cannot spend more time on that, because these are straightforward things and all of that. But you need to look at your current situation with your objectives. Your current situation, that is financially, and your objectives, the things that you want to achieve. If you can balance that and know exactly how are you actually balanced and all of that, then it's easy for you to be able to get to step number 4, which is now getting the best returns. Getting the best returns, that is on your savings and investments. Now you can choose which risk you can take, how long will it take, and all of that. You can perhaps decide if you want to save, from your gross income, for example, like 10% of that, and also if you have an opportunity to work hard so that you can have more cash on hand for a specific period of time, so that you can have so that you can sleep comfortably, So these are things that we can do. You can either choose like traditional investments and all of that. I'm saying these things because we have experienced these things, whereby you will have more debts than, you realize that you have when you are calculating your assets and your liabilities, you are sitting on minus, and then that thing kills you, and then you can't sleep and all of that. You see? And also it gives you a peace of mind when you know that you have a plus balance and you have a happy retirement and all of that, so that's life. So that's a good thing. And one last thing that I would like to talk about is that if you can actually have 4 accounts when you are a person that is actually in a long-term commitment, that is a type of account that you can have a sort of like a mortgage, cars, entertainment, and all of these things like that. You know that they are necessities of the house. You have a separate account for that, and then you've got an account that is separate, which is an account for savings and investment. And then after that, you've got your own account as a spouse, as a husband, whereby you can have an allowance that can allow you to do whatever that you need to do, and also your spouse can also have that. So the most important thing is that we want to talk about these things so that you can be able to actually, relax. Once you have wealth, health and happiness is guaranteed. And also you will require a plan of action and all of that. May you enjoy all of this. This is actually a sort of like an enjoyment of life. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. And please do subscribe on our videos. Thank you.